My name is Suzanne Andrews. I'm the CEO of the Queen West Chamber of Commerce, and it's my great pleasure to host today's business luncheon with our local MPP Todd Smith. Thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule to join us today. We also have Mark Kirkpatrick from Loyalist College, so thank you so much for joining us. And also we have representatives here from Loyalist College and our TMH and so many other great organizations, the City of Queen West and the new museum here in town. We also have with us Claudia DeSanti from the Ontario Chamber of Commerce. She's the senior policy analyst there. Is that correct? Close. Anyways, it's great to have Claudia drive from Toronto to join us today for our luncheon. And as you all know, these events don't happen without sponsors. And today's sponsor is Enbridge Gas. And if you didn't know, Enbridge Gas is Canada's largest natural gas storage, transmission, and distribution company, and they're based right here in Ontario. And 2023 is marking their 175th anniversary of providing safe and reliable service to customers. So that's a great milestone, so congratulations on that. They provide an affordable energy choice for approximately 3.9 million residents and businesses, and they are leading the transition towards a net zero future. With us today, representing Enbridge Gas, is Dean Delpay from, he's the VP Distribution, Operations, Service, and Governance. And also we have with us Brad Latanzi, who's the Government Affairs Strategist. So thank you for joining us. And I would like to ask Dean to please come up and bring greetings and as today's sponsor, and to also tell us a little bit more about Enbridge Gas. So come on up.
Well, I'll have to speak loud.
Yes.
We don't have a mic.
Not yet.
That's not normal for me, but anyways, beautiful country. I had to take a bit of the back roads to get here. My goodness, it's beautiful. First time being here, so you really have a beautiful area. I'd like to thank the Quinte West Chamber of Commerce for putting together such a great event. I'm pleased to be in the community today and to have the honor of joining our special guest speaker who will come up after we have lunch. Honorable Todd Smith, Ontario Minister of Energy and MPP for the Bay of Quinte. So I'm sure many of you know him. I just wanted to give a little bit of a background on a few of his accomplishments. Minister Smith is a graduate of Loyalist College, and prior to working in politics, had a lengthy career in radio broadcasting, I think in this area. He was first elected as MPP in 2011 in the riding of Prince Edward Hastings. While in opposition, he served as the PC critic for many portfolios, including the energy file, which he holds today. He was re-elected in the Bay of Quinte riding and was reappointed to serve as the Minister of Energy, a file which he is very familiar with and has held since 2021. Congratulations on that. Previously, and this is where the resume gets quite in depth, he has served as Government House Leader, Minister of Government and Consumer Services, Minister of Economic Development, Job Creation and Trade, and Minister of Children, Community and Social Service. Enbridge has had the pleasure of working with the Minister on a wide range of files and can attest that he is an excellent advocate for Ontario's energy sector. Minister Smith has, of course, been instrumental in the success of natural gas community expansion program. It is bringing safe, cost-effective, dependable natural gas to communities throughout Ontario in rural and remote areas. We also appreciate the support from the Minister and the Ontario government on our pilot hybrid heating solution, which offers cost-effective, resilient, low-carbon energy solutions through clean home heating initiatives. And obviously, with the whole carbon piece that is in front of us and that we're trying to drive down, that is key to what we want as Ontario. And we're pleased that the Ontario government is removing legislation barriers that have been prohibiting carbon capture and storage, safe and proven technology that offers an important pathway for emission reductions for industries like steel, cement, fertilizer production that can't be practically electrified. And I'm not sure most people know that. In the future, there might be options, but at this point, we need other options in front of us. These actions are a great example of pipes and wires approach to energy system management that prioritizes a cost-effective and resilient path to achieve a clean energy future. As all of us in this room are aware, the energy sector is at an inflection point. The entire industry is seeking to provide energy security and affordability at a time when the population is increasing alongside demand, and also ensuring sustainability and reliability. All of these are absolute must for Ontario families and businesses, and we can't focus on one over the other. And I think I'm pushing some buttons.
That's okay. We'll switch it back.
Just stuck together, sorry about that. So the pipes and wire energy transition helps with all that. Specifically, the energy transition path includes targeted electrification paired with leveraging the existing gas system to deliver clean fuels such as renewable natural gas, hydrogen, and advanced carbon capture storage for the industry. So Enbridge is heavy into that, trying to be one of the leaders in it, and it'll be key as we continue to drive down emissions in Ontario. Leveraging the pipes already in the ground is the most economical way to move forward to meeting the climate goals. This paired with electrification will ensure a path to net zero while taking into consideration reliability and cost, which is important to everybody in Ontario. Studies show this approach can achieve Ontario's emission reductions targets at a lower cost for customers than an intense electrification, while also offering greater customer choice, maximizing energy system dependability and resiliency in extreme weather. In short, we must ensure we are leveraging all energy sources and existing infrastructure in the most responsible way to achieve our collective goals relative to climate action. There is no question that energy transition is a massive undertaking for our province and for the country. And success will require energy companies, regulators, policymakers to work together at all levels to bridge the gap that exists to develop an innovative, real, and sustainable outcome that will enable future generations to not only exist, but to thrive. That's why we are pleased to have Minister Smith, at the helm to lead the province on this file. And of course, we know that no one can do it alone. So I'd be remiss not to mention strong support from the Energy Transition Electrification Panel, as well as together, we look to chart a path forward to a greener future while ensuring economic and social stability for residents and businesses across the province. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Dean. I think we all learned a little bit more about the role that Enbridge Gas is playing as the province looks for solutions to some of our energy issues here in the province. So we are going to take a break for lunch, and then we'll come right back afterwards. Minister Smith will do his presentation, and then we're going to open it up for Q&A at the end. So if you have some questions for our local MPP on the budget and other things that are going on, or if you have a question for him as the Minister of Energy. I know that energy is a big issue for a lot of businesses, and I see a few manufacturers here in the room today, so I know that you're interested in what he has to say. So it is a buffet lunch. I'm going to start with the tables on this side of the room so that we're not walking past everybody on this side of the room as they're eating. So if we could start with this table, just walk through the door here, and we'll come out the other side and we'll eat lunch, and we'll join back in about 20-25 minutes. Thank you. Please continue to go up and get your coffee or your dessert. We are going to continue on with our program.
Another pot.
Okay, I'm going to get your attention. Sorry. I just want to make sure we get everybody out of here on time. Coffee and tea and dessert is over on the table here. Please feel free to go up and help yourself. We're going to continue on with today's program so we can get everybody out of here on time. Dee did a great job of introducing our guest speaker today and talked about his political history, I guess, and all the different portfolios he's had. I want to just also take a moment to mention how lucky we are as the Quinte West Chamber of Commerce to have such an accessible MPP representing our riding. Jennifer is here as well, who is the Director of Constituent Operations. And I know throughout COVID, and she was great in helping businesses who were having issues with funding and accessing some of the programs that are out there. She went to bat so many times for businesses. And it was just wonderful knowing that we had people working in our local constituency office that cared about the business community and made sure that they use their influence and their contacts to get answers that people were looking for. Being able to have our MPP, who also happens to be a minister, so we have to share him with the rest of the province. We don't get to keep them all to ourselves. And just knowing how busy Todd is, knowing how the effort he makes to make sure he's in the riding, he's accessible, takes the time to come out and join us for this luncheon to make sure that our business community understands what's in the budget, what's going on with the energy file is so amazing. We have a government affairs committee at the Quinte West Chamber of Commerce. Rosie Willette is here. She actually represents Three Oaks. But she is the chair of our government affairs committee. So thanks, Rosie, and for being here today and representing that committee. We do a lot of great work at that committee. Mostly we're looking at business issues, whether it's the municipal level, the provincial, or the federal. And we work with our partners at the Canadian Chamber of Commerce and the Ontario Chamber of Commerce. And like I mentioned, we've got Claudia here, who is the senior manager of policy from the Ontario Chamber. We have the convention next weekend down in Niagara, and I know she's going to be busy there, where we will be voting on policy resolutions that will become part of the platform that the OCC will be lobbying the Ontario government on over the next year. So it's great to have you all here, and I'd like to now ask our MPP, the Honorable Todd Smith, to come out and bring you up.
Well, thanks very much. Thanks very much, Suzanne. Thanks to Morgan. Thanks to everybody at the Chamber of Commerce for the work that you do in representing the voice of business in our community here in Quinte West, which is, the mayor was here. You know what he would say. He would say, Quinte West is the best. So a couple of my colleagues in cabinet were joking about that earlier this week. We had the Solicitor General here last week to visit our fire department and our OPP station, and the first thing out of the mayor's mouth to the Sol Gen was Quinte West is the best. That's all you got to remember. So they were teasing me about that in cabinet earlier this week. I believe it's true, actually. The Bay of Quinte is the best region. And Dean, thanks for your comments, and good to see you here in the Bay of Quinte region along with Brad. And Brad's been here a couple of times in the past from Enbridge. Thanks for sponsoring today's luncheon, and I do enjoy working with you guys on a lot of important issues on the energy file. Claudia, great to see you. I'm not sure if I'm going to see you in Niagara Falls next week or not. I was just trying to, when Suzanne mentioned that, I was looking through my schedule to see if I was going to Niagara Falls next week. I probably am, and always love going to Niagara Falls. It's a great place and produces a lot of electricity for our province. Those falls are pretty good for creating electrons. And always good to see Dave here as well, Super Dave O'Neill, councillor from Quinte West. Great to see you, Dave, and always enjoyed your dad's work in this job when he was the MPP for Quinte, and Mr. Quinte, of course, Hugh O'Neill. So anyway, great to see everybody that's here. I'm going to get right to my remarks, and it's a good thing we had fulsome discussion on the energy file during lunch, because I'm not going to talk that much about the energy file during the presentation that I have here. I'm going to take you a little bit back in time. So it was about a year ago. We were busy making our last minute preparations for the writ drop. We were getting our signs ready to go. We were opening campaign offices and lining up our volunteers that were out there pounding the pavement. And the 2022 budget was really the centerpiece of our election platform last year, rebuilding the economy, which we've seen a lot of activity on, building key infrastructure as well, working for workers, keeping costs down, and ensuring that our economy stays open with increased investments in healthcare. And after a month of campaigning, we learned there was quite an appetite for our plan. And under the direction of Premier Ford, we returned with a larger majority than the one we had, 83 seats instead of 76. And we know that there was renewal on the minds of a lot of people with the pandemic sort of in the rearview mirror at that point in time. Over that month of campaigning, my team knocked on more than 20,000 doors across the Bay of Quinte. I was out there every day. I always enjoyed doing that because during the campaign, I could fit into my size 38 pants by the end of it. We didn't take anything for granted. Through that time, we learned some really valuable lessons about what people were expecting in this community. Healthcare was very, very top of mind, and it's great to see the folks from our TMH here, both primary care and ensuring that we had services in our hospitals, especially in Prince Edward County and in Trenton. And home ownership was also very much top of mind for the people of Quinte. Price of a home had gone up to about $620,000, $640,000 on average, which doesn't sound like a whole lot for our folks from the GTA that are visiting us here today. But one of the things that I heard from people that were my age, or even a little bit older or a little bit younger, was that, are my kids ever going to have an opportunity to buy a house in this community? My girls are now 20 and 22, and I wonder about that. So in the past year, we've been taking a very, very aggressive approach to produce needed change for our growing population. And it starts with building that strong economy, good, well-paying jobs. And this year, Ontario is going to provide about $8 billion in cost supports for employers, including over $3.5 billion for small businesses. And we're bringing back manufacturing jobs en masse. We're continuing to see red tape being reduced across the economy. I used to be the minister responsible for reducing red tape. 2 bills a year I would bring forward when I was at Economic Development, Job Creation, and Trade, trying to make businesses more competitive. And we've reduced the cost of doing business, as I say, by almost $8 billion. This transformation is happening with additional foreign and domestic investment. Last year, we secured 150 new deals from a range of sectors. And that highlights the booming economy that we're focused on right now. Our critical mineral strategy in the north is so important, converting our coal plants that are currently operating, our steel plants, to greener fuels or electric arc furnaces, attracting significant investments in rebuilding the auto sector. Many of you have probably heard me say this story a few times, but I was the Minister of Economic Development in 2018, our first year in government. I got the call from the Premier's office, Minister, you have to take this really, really important phone call. I was with my daughters at the RCAF Museum in Trenton, the RCAF Arena, I should say, in Trenton. They were on the ice playing. I ducked into the referee's room to take a call from GM Global, who informed me that the next day they were going to be announcing they were closing the Oshawa GM plant after 100 years in business. And they did say at the time, it's nothing you've done, Minister, it's nothing your government has done. We know you're going to fix this, and someday we'll be back. But right now, we have to make the decision to pull the plug on GM Oshawa. And it wasn't just GM Oshawa that was in trouble. Immediately, I got on the phone with Chrysler, Stellantis, Ford, Toyota, Honda. And what we've seen over the last little while, because of the Driving Prosperity Plan that we put in the window when I was Minister of Economic Development, and Vic Fideli has built on with following programs to get the economy going again on EVs, we've seen multi-billion-dollar investments, $17 billion worth of investments in the EV sector at all of those OEMs that I mentioned in the auto sector, including Volkswagen just a couple of weeks ago. And the team actually is down in St. Thomas right now. The Premier is there with Minister Fideli. I was invited to go, but I had another engagement here in Trenton. I would have liked to have been there. But it was an all-of-government approach to making sure we landed that Volkswagen deal, which is the first gigafactory outside of Europe for Volkswagen ever. And we got it in Ontario. So we're very, very proud of the work that we did on that. In the past year, Ontario has seen double-digit percentage growth in manufacturing sales, international exports, wholesale trade, retail trade, nearly 10% growth in jobs over 2 years, the strongest growth on record. And this growth and the associated tax revenue has allowed our budget expenditures to continue to expand to a record, and this is our budget this year, almost $205 billion. Yet our deficits are shrinking at the same time because we've been able to grow the economy. And we are on track to return to balance in a couple of years' time. So it's been a very, very tremendous success story. Our goal is to support and sustain that growth, and we know that we need another 300,000 workers, and some of you here are looking for those workers, and we've got to fill the jobs that we have now while continuing to add new jobs to our economy. We need another 1.5 million homes in Ontario in 10 years to fill our housing affordability task force's target to keep pace with other G7 nations. And we need to ensure that there's access to essentials like healthcare and mental health and high-speed broadband internet. We're investing $4 billion in high-speed internet, have everybody hooked up by the end of 2025 in every corner of the province, including here in Bay of Quinte. And we're investing in proper training and education as well. Especially for local manufacturers, I'm excited about a new manufacturing tax credit that's in the budget, a 10% refundable credit on buildings and machinery and equipment, and it could provide up to $2 million in savings to a business. So there's no better time to invest and grow than right now in Ontario and here in the Quinte region. A major plank in the government's economic portfolio is also our skills development funds. By investing close to $700 million over the past 3 years, we've seen 400,000 workers find the appropriate training to advance their careers, and that's regardless of their field or background. And here in Bay of Quinte, we've seen a dedicated program to attract skilled trades workers for construction and for manufacturing careers, culinary and hospitality as well through Loyalist College. Some of my favorite programs assist our labor force by providing jobs for people who were previously falling through the cracks or ending up on the social service roles. And as a former Minister of Social Services, we've got the Elevate Plus program that operates with Quinte Economic Development Commission and Loyalist College. And it provides individuals that are on ODSP or OW the supports that they need, those wraparound supports to get back up on their feet and have the independence that they're looking for while filling jobs in our manufacturing and food processing sector. John Howard Society also has a similar program, and so many other programs we've been able to provide funding for. With targeted investments by the government, we can maximize potential shortages and address shortages as they come along. And we're also offering retraining and up to $28,000 to cover expenses for training programs, including new micro-credential programs offered by the likes of Loyalist College, and local employers can access that funding quickly. So more than 7,700 people have accessed this training since 2021. And as you can see on the screen there now, we're allowing high school students as well to pursue a career in the skilled trades through apprenticeship earlier, and opening additional dual credit courses for high school students in in-demand careers. Some 2,000 high school students a year are going to have the opportunity for the hands-on experience in the health sector alone. And there's some local issues that we're working with President Kirkpatrick with at Loyalist College that we're going to get solved in the next year. I'm confident we will when it comes to the many apprenticeships that we can offer here in the local region. We know that most of the world is facing prolonged labor shortages due to baby boomers reaching retirement, and it's a competitive market. And one thing that we're going to do is attract skilled workers back to Ontario from around the world through a $25 million investment. We're tripling the number of professionals prioritized for economic immigration annually by 2025, and that means engineers, truck drivers, healthcare workers, importantly, and tradespeople are going to become available to us, and we need them desperately. By continuing to reduce childcare costs through the federal provincial agreement that we were able to reach earlier this year, and some of the other programs that we put in place to make life more affordable, like getting rid of the license plate stickers, cutting the automotive fuel tax by 5.7 cents per liter through to the end of 2023. We're doing more to support working families to help aid in productivity here locally. When it comes to housing, material cost inflation, skilled trade shortages, secondary residences used for temporary accommodation, and the approvals process at all levels, we have slowed supply and curtailed access. We got to build more homes. That's the bottom line. And if you were at the housing summit last Friday night at the National Air Force Museum, you probably heard me say, build, baby, build. And that's what we got to do. We got to build. And my colleague, Steve Clark, the Minister of Municipal Affairs, likes to remark that we've gone from being NIMBY to bananas, build absolutely nothing anywhere near anyone, which is bananas. And since 2018, our government has introduced 10 different pieces of legislation to encourage more homes to be built. And the latest More Homes Built Faster Act promotes gentle densification, encourages additional residential units in urban areas through building code and provincial policy statement changes, and encourages the building of affordable and nonprofit rental housing by allowing reductions and exemptions. He's brought through so many pieces of legislation, it's hard to keep track of them all. The latest one, also important to people in this area, will allow farm families to sever up to 3 lots for their family members. One of the biggest challenges I know that we're facing in Prince Edward County, and probably here at Quinte as well, is that family farms are unable, or were unable until this legislation came forward last week, to sever off land for their sons or daughters who may want to stay on that land and run the farm. And so this is a great thing, and I think we're going to see a big uptick in local home building on those lands. The government's supporting municipalities as well with reliable, predictable investments in the Ontario Community Infrastructure Fund by doubling those investments over the 5 years. As has been indicated, we are a destination where people are coming from around the world, and Ontario's population is expected to grow by 2 million people over the next 8 years. And most of that growth is going to happen in the GTHA, but a lot of it is happening right here in the Quinte area, especially during the pandemic. We saw a lot of people moving out to take advantage of the great lifestyle that we have here. And so we've got to fix this. The Toronto Region Board of Trade has said that it's costing our economy $11 billion annually, gridlock is. And so we've got to solve that. So with projects like ensuring we've got a 6-lane here on the 401 through Bay of Quinte, which is in the MTO plan now. We desperately need that on top of everything that we're doing in the GTHA with highways and the largest subway build in a generation. So it's time to be proactive, and that's a great segue, I guess, into where our health system is going. And I'm sure most of you, and a lot of you are here right now with your buttons on, you were waving placards at the time to save Trenton Memorial Hospital about a decade ago. And I was out there with you, and we were hearing about regular layoffs in the healthcare sector at that time. And one of the things that we did when we, or inherited when we formed government, the Ontario Hospital Association reported that our population grew by 27% from 1999 to 2018, but we added no new capacity in our hospitals during that time. And they also indicated, the Ontario Hospital Association did, that smaller hospitals and multi-site hospitals like Quinte Health also believed the funding formula didn't keep pace with the growing needs. They began to pick up the slack for primary care shortages and long-term care. Waiting lists were growing to nearly 40,000 people. Governments didn't do enough to counter these trends or plan for our aging population. In 2015, Ontario actually cut the number of medical school seats that were available to make it harder for doctors to practice in team-based environments that they were seeking. And I was just handed a letter from a young man named Andrew O'Brien, who I have known for a while, and I know his story, but our students had to go to Australia or New Zealand or Edinburgh, Scotland to get their medical training, and then they couldn't get back in. So we're going to change that. We put a plan in place First of all, to fix the finances at Quinte Healthcare. They moved from $155 million in their annual operating funds in 2017-18 to $200 million last year. That's a $45 million increase in funding over that time. And it's provided a lot more stability when it comes to jobs and just the viability of our local hospitals. We also introduced a dedicated long-term care ministry. They've committed to 30,000 new modern beds. And we're continuing to roll out those beds and increase staffing in those long-term care homes as well. With the cost of building materials, anybody who's in business right now knows that it's been challenging to get steel in the ground on a lot of these projects. But we're committed to getting these 30,000 new modern beds in there. The pandemic hit, we really saw just how thin the system was stretched. And since that time, we've announced that we're creating 3,500 staffed hospital beds. We've created new legislation to move alternative level of care patients out of the hospital faster, to free up those beds, and started the largest training and recruitment campaign in the province's history. We've seen nearly 10,000 PSWs join the workforce through accelerated training programs like the one at Loyalist College. An additional 2,000 nursing seats have been added to colleges, including Loyalist. And the government started to promote careers in healthcare, and we've seen record enrollment in healthcare programs at colleges and universities in this province. We've got a targeted stay and learn grant that's available, including for nursing at Loyalist College, and those candidates will work here in public healthcare, and hopefully they will stay here and fill those positions for a lifetime. We also increased medical school seats by 455 across the province, including 50 new seats for up-and-coming doctors at Queen's University. And I really do have to congratulate my colleague, Sylvia Jones, our new Minister of Health. You know, once I had breathed a sigh of relief that I wasn't the new health minister, because that rumor was out there. I called Sylvia. We were sworn in on a Friday. I called her Saturday morning and started to talk about the issues that we were facing here in Bay of Quinte when it comes to primary care and ensuring that we have the services that we need in this area. And she's been hard at work. I'll tell you this, she's been rattling cages and trying to change things from the status quo, which clearly wasn't going to work. And the result is Your Health. It's a plan to provide comprehensive care in convenient settings close to home, and it's tackling a lot of the issues that we're facing from a number of different angles. I already talked about the ALC flow and improving that, but we're also funding additional nurses to help offload ambulances faster, providing timely access in emergency settings. And with a surgical backlog, we've invested $880 million to allow hospital operating rooms to work at 110% capacity, adding 67,000 more procedures every year in hospital. And just yesterday, I think, or Wednesday, we had the grand opening of the renovated ICU at Belleville General Hospital, a $4.3 million investment from our government that I was very pleased to be able to get for the folks at Quinte Healthcare. And it's a $6 million renovation in all, and a beautiful setting and modern setting. The staff love it, the patients love it, and so that was a great ribbon cutting the other day at Belleville General Hospital. And you know, we've also provided the go-ahead to offer increased diagnostic imaging and low-risk procedures in community settings, which has been very, very well received. Ontario controls the number of procedures and the amount we pay for them, and clinics have got to follow professional standards and that are developed by Ontario Health and the College of Physicians and Surgeons. And a real complementary piece to help take some of the load off of our hospital emergency rooms. We're investing through Ontario Health to create better solutions in this area. In the latest budget, we doubled the amount of new medical school seats, as I mentioned, from 455 up to 910. We've also instructed the regulators to provide quicker access to certification for those like Andrew from other countries, with similar training standards to improve paths to certification for other internationally trained candidates, prioritize healthcare workers through the Ontario Immigrant Nominee Program. And doctors as well, we've removed caps to enter the family health organizations. It makes it possible for additional doctors to access this team-based model and expand the number of communities that they can go to. They're no longer restricted by a cap. More than ever, we also realize that doctors aren't the only practitioners that are going to help us. I think back one more, Jennifer, Ontario is training an additional 150 nurse practitioners each year. And it's also committed in this budget to support interdisciplinary primary care teams. Those with a mix of nurse practitioners and doctors, social workers, nurses, and other allied professionals. Initially, in the budget, there's 60 million in 18 care teams, and the Belleville Nurse Practitioner-led clinic was one of those. Nurse, social worker, administrators. This is going to help another 2,000 people in our area find primary care by the end of the year. So Karen, who's the pretty person in this picture, because the other guys ain't so pretty, she's the lead at the Nurse Practitioner-led clinic. She's the administrator, one of the administrators, and she's a nurse practitioner, and she goes flat out every single day. So she's so happy to have some support coming. We look forward to her expanding the facility at Belleville, potentially in Queen West, potentially in Prince Edward County. And then there's a number of other applications that are in right now for nurse practitioner-led clinics. You know, many of the primary care issues don't always require a doctor or a nurse practitioner. We recognize that pharmacists can assess and treat a lot of common ailments that are out there that they see every day. I was going to make a joke about Mayor Harrison experiencing most of these except for menstrual cramps. Yeah, you know, things like hay fever, UTIs, cold sores, sprains and strains, hemorrhoids, you know, and those were the initial ones that were in place in January. And now we've added a number of other ones as well, just to help take the load off of the emergency rooms, out of the doctor's office, into pharmacies where they're fully trained to help. We're going to also continue to build hospitals and long-term care beds, and redevelop hospitals, and soon we're going to see shovels in the ground down in Picton at Prince Edward County Memorial Hospital. I'm really excited to be there for that day. I've been talking about this one almost as long as we've been talking about keeping our TMH or TMH going, and really looking forward to turning the shovels on that project. And I know Stacy over at Quinte Healthcare is really excited about some new project submissions for Trenton Memorial and for Belleville General as well that are planned for the next number of years. So it's also worth noting that while we're grateful for an additional $4.4 billion from the federal government in 3 years, and that was an agreement that was also reached earlier this year between the provinces and the feds, Ontario is going to be investing an additional $15.3 billion over that time. So this builds on increases to actual healthcare spending in each of the past 5 years. Last year overall, the Ministry of Health spending topped $75 billion, up from $58 billion just 5 years ago. So the need is growing and the spend is growing along with it. We're also really concerned about mental health in our community and wellness, and we've got a $3.8 billion roadmap to wellness that we're funding along with the federal government, ensuring that there's additional supports in place and wraparound services and connections to care. And one example is the widely successful Project Impact program, which embeds mental health workers with our local police services. Last year, we were able to have that expanded from Belleville, where it started, to here in Quinte West. So mental health counselors are embedded in the police service, and they're answering those calls. And if they come across someone with a mental health issue, that officer isn't necessarily tied up there for 3 or 4 hours. The mental health counselor can come in, take care of the situation, and the officer can actually go to real police calls. And we're also providing a 5% base funding increase for each of our local mental health agencies in the budget. It gives them a little more stability and ability to recruit new members as well. So folks like Rosie and others that are working in this sector, you'll be getting your information soon on how you can spend that 5% increase. We also had a really exciting announcement recently with the government to provide another $202 million to increase supportive housing in our communities. So Hastings County, which would be responsible for Quinte West, And Prince Edward, Lennox and Addington Social Services, they're going to administer this money. We're going to announce along with my colleague MPP Brzee next week, I think it is, just the exact number for Hastings County and how it's a massive increase. I'll just leave it at that. And since I am here with some folks from the energy sector at my table, we should probably touch on a couple of the exciting things that are happening on my ministry right now. I've been very fortunate to be in this portfolio. I love this portfolio. I've been able to travel around the world, particularly on the small modular reactor project. If you don't know, Ontario is leading the world when it comes to small modular reactor development. We're actually going to build the first SMR in the Western world at our site just down the road in Darlington. Construction is already underway. It's a 300 megawatt small modular reactor. GEH is the technology, General Electric Hitachi. It's the BWRX 300. It's a light water reactor. 300 megawatts can provide clean, emissions-free, reliable electricity to 300,000 homes. So a city about the size of London can be powered with one of these small modular reactors. And it's going to be on grid because I hold OPG's feet to the fire every day on this by the end of 2028. So the world really is watching what's happening in Canada, what's happening in Ontario, and what's happening in the clean energy capital of Canada down in Durham region. And I'm so excited to have had this opportunity to get around the world and collaborate with countries from around the world on this new and exciting technology that's going to help them meet their climate goals by driving down emissions in their jurisdictions. And one of the countries that we've been working with has collaborated on this project is Synthos Green Energy out of Poland, which is the 5th largest polluting nation in the world, especially this past winter because they didn't have Russian natural gas, or they chose not to have Russian natural gas. So they're desperate for their own energy autonomy, and these SMRs are going to be able to provide that. Again, you know, Dean talked about some of the projects we're working on with Enbridge, natural gas expansion, clean home heating initiative with hybrid heat pumps as well. We're working on hydrogen development as well with Enbridge, some really exciting pilot projects. And so we're excited about that. Last year, I unveiled our province's hydrogen strategy. We've been talking about it for a long time, but we're on the cusp of really seeing big things happening on the hydrogen front. And we're also in the midst right now of the largest procurement in Canada, probably North America, for energy storage as well, battery storage. And we announced the largest project in Canadian history a couple of months ago with the Six Nations, the Grand River First Nation Development Corporation, the Oneida project, which is a 250 megawatt energy storage facility that's going to be built there to make our grid more efficient and use some of the renewable power that we're selling off at a loss during the overnight periods and using that that energy that's being created during peak periods here in our own province to help meet the needs that we have here. So having said all that, I know a number of you have questions, but thanks for inviting me. I love working with the folks at the Quinte West Chamber. They're great partners. They do such a great job advocating for business, and not just business, but other things in our community. I love seeing them come to Queen's Park and bringing their message there. And of course, valued members of the Ontario Chamber of Commerce. So Claudia, please send my best back to Rocco and the team at the Ontario Chamber of Commerce. And we'll probably see you next week in Niagara Falls. Thanks for coming, everyone.
Thank you so much. It's always great to get your updates, and I'm sure some of you have some questions, and we'll open up in just a second. Before I do that, we do have a couple of questions that have come from the Quinte West Government Affairs Committee based on some feedback we got from our businesses. Last fall, as part of the Ontario Economic Report that the OCC put together, Quinte West businesses were surveyed. We had about 150 businesses respond to that survey. 54% of them were expecting to have labor shortages in 2023. That's a huge number. And just wondering, you know, what is the Ontario government going to do to support businesses to help them attract, retain, and train up those employees?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I touched on it in my remarks, but the skills development funding is huge. $700 million is significant, and getting 400,000 new employees into the workforce. There's all kinds of different funding programs that are available for employers out there to access, whether it be for apprenticeship programs, making sure that individuals have the tools and equipment in some cases that they need. But skills development funding is available through a number of different avenues. I talked about Elevate Plus and the work that they're doing and getting people off social assistance, which is an enormous win, because not only is it a win for taxpayers because those people no longer require social services to support them. They're now off the social assistance rolls, they're paying taxes, and they're working full time, you know, at CB Freezers here in Trenton, or Vantage Foods in Belleville, or some of the other participating manufacturers and food processing companies in our area. You know, we've been out with skills development funding to places like the Enrichment Center as well, Quinte Immigrant Services, helping newcomers, and we do have a lot of newcomers that have come particularly through Loyalist College, but others that have migrated out from the GTA that need supports that Quinte Immigration Services can provide. And then some really neat stuff as well. One of the biggest areas that people do need support is in the culinary and service sector, and there's been some really innovative programs through SDF and Loyalist College. Their culinary program that they have there, which is second to none, and they've got a great facility there now as well. It does great work at Loyalist College. If you ever need some sweets, think about stopping by Club 213 and the new culinary school of Loyalist. There's some great stuff there, but I would say that, you know, the money that we're investing in skills development funding and a lot of the changes that we are making with apprenticeships, having noted that we still do need to make some changes, and we're really working on that with the Ministry of Labor to address some of Loyalist's concerns there. And the stuff that we're doing with high school students and kids in school to expose them to potential careers in the skilled trades at an earlier age, I think is going to make a huge difference. Not tomorrow, but in the future. We need so many skilled trades people to meet the demand that's coming. You know, I always used to say, and that was 11 years ago, the average age of a stonemason in Ontario was 55 years old. Well, that guy's now 66 years old. And so we need to encourage people to get into those skilled trades. We desperately need them, and more of them are being exposed through things like the OYAP, the Ontario Youth Apprenticeship Program, and others.
And that was kind of the second part of my question. And I know Mark and I met, they gave me a tour of the college. And it's really disappointing to hear how many applications for apprenticeship programs to be run on a Loyalist have been turned down by the province. And there's a lot of announcements around apprenticeship training and funding, but yet we can't get our own kids here on the program. So is that something you see? Is there a movement on that? Because I know it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, I get lots of things that might come in here on my radar, but now they're here. This one's here. So like I'm on it. We've been on it. My whole team, Jennifer, who is my DOCO now, she's my director of constituency office, my DOCO. She's on it. My staff at the Ministry of Energy are on it. The Ministry of Labor. We're going to fix that. We're going to fix it soon, because you're right. It doesn't make any sense. And Mark's been very strong in making sure that I understand what needs to get done. So
that's very good.
Very persuasive.
So one quick last question, and then I'm going to open it to the floor, is given the housing shortage in our area, especially rental units, are there plans to offer incentives to building companies to create more rental housing, and are there plans or incentives to repurpose surplus government-owned buildings?
Yep. Yeah, that's all in the plan. You know, and the plan is working. It's going to take a while, obviously. Supply, we need to build, baby build. We need the supply. We put a number of different incentives in place. We've got this funding that's going to be coming, as I mentioned, for Hastings County. That'll be announced next week for supportive housing, transitional housing projects, and geared to income rental projects. We need to start building up even in places like Trenton and certain places in Quinte West. I'm not saying we need to have 52-story buildings in Trenton by any means, but gentle intensification, I believe, is necessary. And so there's all kinds of incentives for developers to do that. And the plan is working. I sit next to Minister Clark in question period every day. And this week he was talking about the fact that so far this year, we have had over 5,500 rental housing starts in the province, which is more than double the previous year. And there were hardly any starts from 1993 until 2018. So it's happening, but it's going to take a while to catch up.
Okay, I'm going to open it up to the floor. Who would like to? Shandy?
Thank you, Mr. Smith, for being here. I just wondered if you could touch on a little bit of the EV charging infrastructure.
Yep. So on EV charging, first of all, we've come to an agreement. This is a very preliminary program that's now completed, but at our en route stations, working with IV charging. We have fast chargers now at all of the en route locations across the province, except for the one that's currently being torn down and rebuilt at Newtonville. We didn't think it would make sense to put one in there while they're tearing it apart, but all of the other ones across the province now have IV fast charging stations in there. In the budget, there's $90 million for rural communities to have infrastructure in their communities, and we've gone to all of the municipalities, including Quinte West, to ask them for ideas on where it makes sense to have fast chargers located in the communities. So what we want to ensure happens is that these fast charging stations are located in places where there is going to be flow. What we saw previously from a different government was fast charging stations went into the GO train parking lots. Somebody would come in, they would park their car, plug it in, go to work in Toronto all day, and then come back and get in their car. So one car used that station in the whole day. We want to make sure there's rotation and flow so that people are actually, providing an opportunity for others to charge. That's what's going to happen. You've seen, I was with Tesla Toronto about a month ago touring their facilities in North York. They now have Tesla charging stations from Halifax or Cape Breton right through to Victoria. So you can drive across the country in your Tesla now, if you're fortunate enough to have one of those. And we have some stations here in Trenton that I think just went in a few weeks ago. We've had the one in Belleville at Quinte Mall for quite some time, but the infrastructure is happening across the province. There's an opportunity there for individual business owners as well through the private market to get Flow or IV or one of the other companies that's providing these charging stations to install it at your place of business if you think it's going to attract people driving EVs into your business. It's something you can look at, and there are ways to recoup your investment as well with advertising on the charging stations too. So it might not be as expensive as you think it is once you have some of those programs in place. But we're definitely going to need more EV charging stations. And one of the things that the Pathways to Decarbonization, which was the report that I asked the Independent Electricity System Operator to do, what kind of investments are we going to need in our province if we intend to hit the federal government's target of net zero by 2050? And the report came back in December. It's a massive document that talks about massive investments in generation, in transmission as well. And it's currently out for public consultation. So if you've got an afternoon and you want a good read, take a look at it, and it's open for public consultation until mid-May, and then we'll be making some decisions probably in June. No regrets actions, we call them, going forward. We can start to build out for all of the electricity infrastructure that we're going to need. Yes.
Mr. Smith, how are you?
Good.
Good. Lori Collette, I'm actually the new industry partnership officer for Women's College.
Sure.
Just in the same vein, do you see any particular needs in terms of labor for the future?
Yeah, so did everybody hear the question? Particular needs for EVs, and we're expecting to be building 400,000 EVs in this province alone by the end of the decade. So with the multi-billion-dollar investments that I was talking about at GM and Ford and all of the other automakers, Stellantis and others, Volkswagen, we're going to need people to work in these facilities. One of the things that we did in our Driving Prosperity Plan, phase 1 that I introduced, phase 2 that Minister Fideli introduced, was ensuring that we were upskilling individuals that are working in the auto sector right now for the vehicles and the sector in the future. So yeah, there's a lot of upskilling that's necessary for those that work in the sector, but there's going to be great opportunities for young people to fill jobs when it comes to, you know, helping to develop a bigger, better battery that's going to increase the range of your vehicle. And that kind of work is happening right now at colleges and universities across the province, but we're only going to need more of that as this sector continues to evolve. You know, it's an exciting time, but there are challenges to what we're doing here and to where the sector is going. So there's going to be tremendous opportunities for young people in skilled trades to work on this new technology in the electric vehicle sector for sure. Sharon has a healthcare question. I'm a mind reader.
I'm certain you'll be surprised, but it's about dialysis.
Oh, okay.
And you know we've been hammering away since 2016 for our 70+ people that we can't get verification through the Ministry of Health, because we asked them to check the postal code numbers to verify our numbers, but the renal network would accept our numbers. And we still haven't received that answer. But you announced a year ago in March that Belleville is going to renovate, increase, and improve the unit, and that by the end of last year, you expected it to be started or even finished. And I ran into a healthcare worker from that unit a couple of weeks ago. Nothing structurally has started. There's mold in the walls, and the place is literally falling apart. And she said it's a very difficult place to work in and try to help these people. So for the dialysis patients of Quinte West, Belleville, and townships, do you have an answer?
Well, thanks for the feedback. First I've heard, so Jennifer's written it down. First she's heard about it. We'll definitely look into it because this is a promise that was made to get that done. And I know how desperately we need it. We wanted to make sure that we had dialysis in the region, so those folks didn't have to go all the way to Kingston, especially in the middle of a winter storm. I'm still committed to doing that, so we'll get an update. And I'll get back to you, Sharon, on the status and when we expect to see carpenters at work at that facility.
Can you ask Minister Jones to check the postal code numbers of the dialysis patients so we can get an accurate update?
Okay. Yep.
Because since we did that in 2019, I believe it's roughly a 5-year time span that people pass away.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
So we know we've lost several of those people, but we also know they've been replaced.
Yep.
And our diabetic numbers are sky high in this area, so we know they're going up.
Yeah.
We would like to get a verified, accurate number of dialysis patients in West and our West Township.
Yeah, I'll see if Sylvia can get that.
Thank you.
Get that for us. So Jennifer's jotting notes down over there.
Appreciate that.
She'll do that. Anybody else? Yeah, Mike? Oh, you went too?
Yes, Minister Smith, thank you very much for coming here and giving us the input. As you know, the Financial Accountability Office predicted last year that we could be short as many as 33,000 nurses in the PSWs. What I just wanted to check on with yourself, and Bill, we had Bill for this. What plans does the government have to look after this situation? Because in 5 years, we're short 33,000. Our hospitals will collapse just because we've got nobody in front of them.
Yep.
And it could be a very disastrous
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, Minister Jones has been very busy on this. This isn't unique to Ontario by any means. Every province across Canada is facing the same kind of challenges, and every jurisdiction around the world, especially post-COVID, is facing these challenges. So, you know, we have, as I mentioned, a number of accelerated programs in place for personal support workers. We know we're going to need so many more of those workers, not just for our hospitals, but for our long-term care facilities and for our home care services as well. We are an aging population that's going to require more and more health care, particularly in this area, as Sharon pointed out. I mean, you know, we have high rates of diabetes in this area. We have poor determinants of social determinants of health in this area, and we have an older population than most parts of the province. So that's why I was really excited to be able to announce things like the accelerated PSW program, the new nursing program at Loyalist College. So those students no longer do their first 2 years here at Loyalist and then go down to Brock University and St. Catharines, never to be heard from again. They'll be able to do their 4 years on campus here at Loyalist College. The number of nurses enrolled in our college and university system is at an all-time high right now, which is a great sign. It doesn't fix the need today, but it is going to help out down the road. You know, the other factor though is that there's going to be more and more of us that are requiring care as we graduate more and more nurses. So the reinforcements are coming. We've seen record highs. I talked about some of the immigration programs that we have in place to bring in those who are recognized as equivalent credentials in other jurisdictions. Those who might be a doctor in another jurisdiction can potentially come here and work as a nurse's aide or a PSW while trying to acquire their credentials here. You know, the population is aging, but our population is growing too. As I mentioned, we're expected to see an additional 2 million people move into Ontario in the next 10 years. So the need is only going to grow for healthcare, for housing, for energy, everything. So there's a lot of programs in place, Mike, to attract more people. Talk about the doctors and the new nursing and doctor spaces that are available, but and then expanding scope of practice for those who work in the sectors is really important too, to help take the load off just the primary care, which is already feeling the strain.
Yeah, Mr. Smith, thank you for coming, and thank you for the life of public service, by the way.
It seems like a lifetime.
I do want to thank you for what you did in the red tape piece. So I worked for an employer where it truly made a difference for us and actually has allowed us to find the path and track forward. So to you and all of your teammates that did that, thank you. Despite the next question I'm going to ask you, I am not with the pitbulls from our TMA. But I do.
They're tough but fair.
I do want to share a story with you, and the story comes from a colleague at work, and it comes from a colleague's mother who was elderly, mid to upper 80s, I believe, and had a family doctor, had some health issues, and basically was in the place where even with the benefit of the family doctor, could not find their way to service, their way to getting better. And of course, that becomes somewhat of a burden eventually on the healthcare system in a much bigger and more expensive way. And I've heard all that you said up there. But if I was speaking to my colleague, I think the thing that they would be most concerned about, and this is a very hard question, perhaps unfair for me to ask, but I think it's a question that ultimately needs to be answered. If we took that long wait time that was required to see a family doctor, and with all the details of the investments that you've made, and there has to be projections somewhere in the background to support them, how can my colleague's mother, other citizens, members of our community, find their way to service faster in a universally acceptable healthcare system, which I totally subscribe to? But it has to keep our population healthy and well, so we can keep working and pay taxes.
Yeah.
And that's really, really important. And so all of the investments and things, they don't mean anything to this person or this person's mother. It's really how long until it'll get better and what will better look like. And I know it's an unfair question.
Oh, no, it's
thought provoking.
Yeah.
I'm grateful for that, but I do want to ask that, or at least have them think about it, and your colleagues think about it.
Sure.
Thanks for what you do.
Thanks, Ethan. Did I ever tell you that I'm really happy to be on the energy file? And it has its challenges too. You know, there has to be a change in thinking. There has to be a change in the way individuals think about how they get their primary care, and how the system has always worked where you had the doctor down the street in the neighborhood that would come over to your house anytime, day or night, because you knew him personally, and he would check on you and your family at midnight. Those days, unfortunately, are gone, and we're changing. Doctors today are not learning to practice in that way. Doctors today are learning to practice in a more team type of a setting, where they can rely on other doctors within the family health team or within the office. They can rely on the nurse practitioners. They can rely on the other healthcare workers that are in the office. And you know, what we've committed to in the budget, and it's going to take a while to roll this out, but you know, they've identified that is the way we're going to try and skin this cat, so to speak, is to invest in those primary care offices that are out there now. So in the case of this region, you know, you've got the Prince Edward County Family Health Team, you've got the Belleville-led Nurse Practitioner Clinic, you've got the Family Health Team here in Quinte West, expanding those operations so that those doctors can work in a team. So you don't have to wait 8 weeks to see your primary care physician. If you have an ailment that needs to be looked at now, you'll be able to get in the next day. It might not be your doctor that sees you, but it's going to be one of the members of the team that sees you. And it's a bit of a shift in the way we think. We should be getting our primary care, but I think that's what we're going to have to do, because that's the way that the young people that are coming through the system now are being trained to operate. And that's the way they want to operate. You know, those guys, they devoted their life. And not just guys, those guys and gals that were doctors devoted their life to being available 24 hours a day. It's a different mindset now. But anyway, it's a very philosophical question.
Okay, we just maybe just another quick question, and from Wendy first, and then we're coming up to 2 o'clock, so we
Oh,
have to wrap this
smokes.
up. Yes, I'm sure Minister Smith has places to be. Yeah.
Minister Smith, thank you for your presentation today. I hadn't planned to ask the question, but since the physician recruitment has come up, I will wear my physician recruitment hat from the foundation. We had a conversation a few months ago about some concerns from our local family health teams regarding the disadvantage that the North has province in recruiting physicians there versus us here. And you know, that we appreciate that you're bringing us to the borders from the countries and provinces. That's important too, and I mentioned on that. But I was attending the Casper conference recently this week, and that's Canadian Association of Staff Recruiters across Canada. And I was really scared because we are now seeing recruiters from Trillium Osler and Ottawa General. And we're not just competing against Renfrew and Smith Falls anymore. Now we've got this competition as well as the North. Is there discussion taking place at all about breaking the barriers or the inequities and incentives from the province to northern recruiters for positions versus southern?
Yeah, it's kind of a no-sum game, right? It's tough to make the system work the way it's working right now, because the big guys are always going to be able to offer bigger and better. So yeah, we're talking about regional approaches and identifying you know, particular areas that have been identified as you know, I forget exactly what the term is. What's the term? Say it again. Underserviced areas. Thank you. Yes, underserviced areas, and you know, we are an underserviced area here. It's not the same story as it is up in Northern Ontario by any means, but we do need more docs. I mean, it's a supply issue on healthcare folks as well. We need to be training more healthcare workers. doctors, nurses, nurse practitioners. That's really what it's going to come down to. But as it stands right now, the big guys are always going to be able to offer more, and it's going to be a challenge for folks in our region, which is why it's important to have programs like the Stay and Learn, or Learn and Stay program, like we have at Loyola College now for nursing in particular. There's a real incentive for young people right now to get into nursing. They can get all of their education paid for, and the only commitment that they have to make is to stay in this region and work, which is a no-brainer for me. Why would you want to do that anyway? We've expanded that Learn and Stay program to places like Loyalist because we are an underserviced area, but also the north. The paramedic program is available for Northern Ontario communities, but potentially, if the need is there, we'll be expanding that to schools like Loyalist and regions like Loyalist serves as well. So, there's all kinds of programs that are being developed to try and fit the need that you're wanting to fill.
All right, we're going to cut off the questions there. I would like to thank our MPP for the generosity of his time today, answering all of our questions. And as we know, as employers that are trying to attract new employees to come and join their operations, having available housing and healthcare are important. So while they're more, maybe they kind of cross that line between social issues and business issues, because I know businesses can get people to move here and work for them if they don't have healthcare, if they don't have housing. So I appreciate all the questions that have come from the audience. Thank you to Dean and to Brad for joining us today and for sponsoring. I'm sure they're the only two in the room that read the huge energy document that you mentioned earlier. Oh, Claudia, okay, well, there you go.
We got Claudia.
Okay, Claudia as well. So the three of them, maybe you guys can exchange notes on it later. It is wonderful to have so many of you here in the room. We have recorded today's information, so it'll be available in our e-news this afternoon. I think Morgan's going to be busy getting that ready to share out with you. So thanks again. And Jennifer is here if you ever have any questions or need any help on any issues, even things that haven't been covered today. You should contact Jennifer. She's amazing to work with, and she's very business friendly. So I think that's always great. So thank you so much for your time.
Thanks.
Appreciate it.